Okay, I would like everybody to take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. So we've kind of gone through the whole focus around Jesus and the crucifixion and Easter and whatnot. So we're going to kind of change gears at this time. And I am going to start the class a little bit differently. I'm going to share a little story that's actually going to lead into what I'm going to be talking about. And I want you to listen to the details of the story because we're going to use those as an example for some of the information I'm going to share. So this old fella that liked to tip the bottle a lot was walking along the river's edge, and he tripped and fell. And he was so drunk that he couldn't even get up. So he decided to just lay there for a while. A few moments later, this big, huge, shiny car came pulling up right next to him. And the woman in the car, this beautiful woman, rolled down the window and she said, "Hey, fella, come here." He looked around and he didn't see anybody, so I figured she must have been talking to him. So he walked over to the car and the beautiful woman said, "Sir, why don't you get in my car and I'd like to take you home and give you a good meal." He was shocked, but why not? He hadn't eaten a good meal for a long time. So he got in the car and they took off. And they drove for a while and then they came to this beautiful community. Drove a little further, pulled up to this big, huge, gigantic house with big, long driveway. Pulled in and she said, "Sir, come on, get out of the car." And she took him in the house. And then she asked her servant to please draw a nice warm bath for the fellow. So he took this nice bath. It had all kind of scented perfumes and oils in it. And it was exquisite. He hadn't had a nice bath for years. Then he shaved. And oh my gosh, he was so surprised. He had a face under all that stubbly beard. And he looked at himself in the mirror and thought, well, hey, I don't look too bad. And then when he came out of the bathroom, there was a whole set of beautiful clothes laid out on the table that just fit him perfectly. And then someone came to the door and escorted him to where the dining area was. And the table was set elegantly with food, like 10 courses of delicious, yummy food. So he started to eat and they had a nice conversation. And he just ate like he'd never eaten before. And he ate so he could barely breathe. He was so stuffed because of all that delicious food. And after a while, they chatted for some time and then they both retired to their rooms. And he got ready and climbed into bed. And then he heard this little knock on the door. And he said, yes. And she said, "Could I come in for a moment?" So she walked in, sat down on the bed, and she said, "So how was everything? Are you doing okay? Is there anything I can get for you?" And at that moment, he leaned over to give her a kiss, and he fell into the river, and he woke up from his dream. And that's the story, guys. And the story I introduced you with is because we're going to talk about, the theme is going to be around the idea of dreams. Because actually for a couple reasons. Number one, I think most of us, despite the fact we might have been in the course for some time, still get a little bit confused with the whole idea of the dream, what that's all about, or as the course uses the word illusion at times. And I actually looked up how many times the word dream and illusion were found in the course, and the combination of the two, there's probably over 2,000, that's right, 2,000 different times those words have been used during the course. So obviously it's a quite important thing that the course is talking about and that Jesus wants us to understand on a very deep level. So I'm going to start by actually defining the word dream as the definition that Ken Wapnick has in the glossary index. So the dream, the post-separation state in which the Son of God dreams of a world of sin, guilt, fear, believing this to be the reality and heaven a dream. The Son, being the dreamer, is the cause of the world, which is the effect, although this relationship between cause and effect appears reversed in the world, as we seem to be the effect of a victim of the world, occasionally used to denote sleeping dreams. There are no real differences between them, waking dreams and sleeping dreams, for both are part of the illusionary world of perception. And I know there was a lot of concepts in there, so I'm going to read that line by line as I do with the paragraphs often. So the dream is the post-separation state in which the Son of God dreams a world of sin, guilt, and fear, believing this to be his reality. And we know from the chart, when we had the tiny mad idea, where we chose the ego, left the Holy Spirit behind, and then had the guilt, sin, and fear in our minds, and then we projected it into a world where I think I'm the character, and there's other characters and other things within the world that affect me. And at this point, we believe this is reality, and we believe that this is the dream. And we don't have very much access to this because we're so caught up in the dream of the illusion. The Son, being the dreamer, is the cause of the world, which is the effect. So as the Course says, the Son is dreaming here, and he projects that into the world, and the world is the effect of the dream that's being held in place. And whether it be this one or this one, we will have the effects within the context of our world, depending which part of the mind we are identified with. Although the relationship between cause and effects appears to be reversed in the world, because we believe we're an innocent victim of the world and all the things that take place in the world. But the Course is trying to help us to really catch on, understand that what we experience in the world is actually coming from the belief that we hold in our mind. So instead of being a victim of the world, we are an effect of a belief system that was set into motion when we chose the ego instead of truth. Okay, and then it explains that it often will then donate sleeping dreams where we know we have dreams at nighttime. And you know, the dream that, or the story I shared at the beginning of the class, denoted a pretty nice dream. You know, I would say most people would say, yeah, I'd like a dream like that. That's pretty cool, except for the end where he splashed into the water and woke up. But we know that whether you have a nighttime dream, whether it is a dream of something wonderful or a dream of something really uncomfortable, while we're dreaming, we feel extremely like it's happening, and we feel very drawn into the experience that's taking place. And while we're dreaming it, we believe it's true. And even beyond that, we know that if people, or you know, scientists or doctors or whatever, put electrodes on our physical body while we're dreaming, that they can actually register. If I'm being chased in my dream, my breathing starts to, you know, get heavy, and I get anxious and whatnot. So our nighttime dreams, though we know intellectually nothing's happening, there's nobody else in the room, nobody's really chasing me. And if somebody in your nighttime dream was mean to you, you wouldn't go up to them the next day at work or whatever and punch them out because they did something to you, because we know how ridiculous that would be. But what the Course is trying to help us lead to and to understand on a deeper level is literally our daytime dream is exactly the same as our nighttime dream. And if you've studied any, you know, Freudian philosophy and other types of philosophy, they actually work on our nighttime dreams, because our nighttime dreams reflect symbolism of things that we aren't conscious enough during the daytime to become aware of. And they all influence and are literally a projection of who we are. So to examine our nighttime dream or our daytime dream is helpful for us to undo the attachment to this dreaming state of which we're pretty unconscious, because we don't believe we're asleep. We think this is life. This is all there is. This is who I am. I'm the effect of whatever is taking place here. And then he goes on to say there is no real difference between them. The waking and the dreaming are both part of the illusionary world of perception. All right, then we're going to read the illusion and the definition of that. Something that is believed to be real, but is not. The ultimate illusion is the separation from God, upon which rests all the malfunctions of the separated world, which may properly be called distortions in perception. Seeing attack instead of a call for love, sin instead of error, the illusion of the world reinforce the belief that the body has value in and of itself, a source of either pleasure or pain. Forgiveness is the final illusion, as it forgives what never was, and lead beyond all the illusions to the truth of God. So again, I'll go through that line by line. Something that is believed to be real, but is not. And obviously all of us, I don't care how long you've been studying the course, and I don't care how much you may think you understand the concept that this is a dream. If you stub your toe or somebody punches you in the arm, we're going to usually respond, and it's probably not going to be with, oh gosh, wasn't that nice? It's going to be some other type of a response that's not coming from a particularly loving place. So that's always very telling of where we really stand in this process. If I can still be affected by anything in my dream, nighttime or daytime, we're still pretty attached to this illusion being my reality. So the ultimate illusion is the separation from God, because what we talked a couple weeks ago, we were at one with God. We had that tiny mad idea of which we thought, gosh, I wonder what it would be like if I could be God. I could be in control. I could be an individual and special, because we weren't satisfied with just receiving all the attributes that God had freely given us that were equal to him. We wanted the whole package. We wanted to be the creator. So we had that experience of separating from love, of which is called an illusion. So technically it never really happened, but to the degree that we identify with it, we do believe it happened, and we do believe it is real. And again, stub your toe and then you'll find out how real you feel it is. So he says, the ultimate illusion is the separation from God, upon which rest all the manifestations of the separated world, which may properly be called distortions in perception. And I think, in our nighttime dreams, it's a little bit easier to grasp the idea of how distorted and unusual they are, because we can have dreams that are just like totally bizarre, and we're chasing after something and we end up somewhere else, and it can be so confusing and unrealistic, I guess you could use the words. But I think in our daytime dreams, especially since we're so addicted to our daytime dreams, it's easy to kind of overlook the insanity of it. And actually somebody sent me a kind of a joke about something that had to do with the coronavirus yesterday. And I responded back to her, I think we would all do well to realize we all live in an insane asylum, and that's what this world is really about. And it's because we keep thinking, oh, this is going to be better. It's going to be wonderful. It's gonna. And the facts are, it's made out of a world of duality. And in a world of duality, you're not going to find joy and peace and love and connectedness. Yes, there's going to be some shiny coins within the context of the dream, which certainly get our attention and will keep us, involved in the concept of the illusion. But in truth, it's a dualistic situation. It's a roller coaster ride of which we like the highs, but we're not too thrilled about the lows. And yet when we identify with ourselves as egos, the answer is we're going to have a dualistic experience. And I remember someone sending another joke about the coronavirus, and they said, well, I don't remember putting coronavirus on my vision board because, because, you know, it's like, well, wait a minute, how did this get manifested? That's not on my board. And yet, you know, it's going to come. And if nothing else, if everything went perfectly beautiful for the rest of your life, the bottom line on your vision board, whether you put it on there or not, the concept of death is going to show up. And that is, again, part of the opposite of what truth is, because in truth, it's eternal. There is no birth, there is no death, there is no separation. And so even in the best of best of best, we're still going to be caught in the whole experience of death in the end. All right. All right, so as a result of the choice for the separation, we're going to see attack instead of a call for love. We're going to see sin instead of error. Illusions of the world reinforce the belief that the body has value in itself. And certainly, we have a great deal of tension that goes around our bodies. In fact, if you really spend some time, pretty much from the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you put your head down on the pillow, because it's your head that goes on the pillow, if you remember, literally everything that takes place in the experience of your daytime dream is going to involve your body and your effect or your influence or your the way you see the world, the way you expect the world to be. It's all focused around little old me. So the body is a huge part of the whole deal that we're constantly playing with in the world, and it keeps us very focused and very busy as well. All right, so forgiveness is the final illusion as it forgives what never was and leads beyond all the illusions to the truth of God. So as we begin to drop the illusion of the ego and we begin to align with the Holy Spirit, we're still going to be part of the illusion because we're still walking around and acting like this body is who I am, but we will do it from a place of a lot less fear, a lot less attachment, a lot less anxiety. We'll be directed a lot more as far as there's going to be less conflict and confusion that occurs in your experience. So, but this is a way better place than this. And as Ken would often explain, that the identification with the Holy Spirit is the reflection of love and heaven in the illusion that is the best that we're going to get as long as we're still walking and talking in the world. And that it's very similar to if you have, you know, a favorite grandfather who you absolutely love, and excuse me, you carried a picture of your grandfather, and every time you looked at your grandfather's picture, you would then be reminded of your grandfather. So this is going to be like the reflection of the memory of what truth is, and it's a way better than the projection of guilt, sin, and fear and separation. Alrighty, I think somebody's got their mic on, so okay. So does anybody have any comments before I go on with either one of those definitions? Nope. All right, going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right, so I have put together a new chart, and let me just show you how this fits in relationship to this chart. So basically, this chart is going to be the left side of the chart, and it's mostly going to be focusing on our experience within the context of the dream. And as I mentioned earlier, I chose the topic of the dream because I think it's something that we get a little bit confused over, and it's not always real clear. So if we look at this chart, and I'm going to put it next to this, although it belongs over there for this moment. I hope you can see it. Basically, this area is going to be here. This little tiny bit here is this, and then this little red dot here is equal to that. So with that, I'm going to move this chart over here so you can see it hopefully better. Let's see. All right. So with this chart, as we fell asleep, and I have a bed up here, and the bed actually represents symbolically the Son of God falling asleep when he chose for separation instead of aligning with what truth is. And we talked a little bit about the idea of me and the importance that I play in the role of my daily or nightly dreams. And as you can see, the physical body here is pretty large compared to the other items that are found on this chart. And if you notice the words hero here, and actually I'll read that little section I wanted to share. And we'll probably come back to this further on as we continue the study of the course or of this section, but I'm just going to read a line here. And this is from a section on page 585, and it's in chapter 27, section 8, paragraph 1. And it says, the body is the central figure in the dreaming of the world. There is no dream without it, nor does it exist without the dream in which it acts as if it were a person to be seen and to be believed. It takes the central place in every dream which tells the story of how it was made by other bodies, born into the world outside the body, lives a little while and dies to be united in the dust with other bodies, dying like itself. And this is a really unique section where it really does talk a lot about the body, the importance of the body, and the focus of how we would be helpful for us to understand the value that the body has within the context of this storyline. So as you see over here, it says ego and dream, and obviously the result of that was separation, and with it came guilt, sin, and fear, and death. And if you notice on this chart, on this side, and I hope you can see the pictures clearly. If you can't, well, maybe bring it closer. I don't know if it won't stand up. All the things on this side of the chart are what we would call positive things. All the things on this side are what we would call difficult or negative things, things that we would probably not cling to or run to. And yet they are things that are equally given just the same amount of effort, energy, whatever you want to call it, to the dream. And after I put this together, I thought, wow, this looks like a vision board. And as I mentioned earlier, that story of I didn't ask for the coronavirus to be on my vision board. If you think about it, the vision board is usually picking on things that I want to manifest for myself. But we don't understand that on a deep underlying level, the vision board that we've chosen is a vision board with a roller coaster ride of good and bad, right and wrong, pleasure, pain, the total opposites come, and they automatically come with our vision board when we choose for the ego. And we can say, well, I like going on picnics, or I like the 4th of July parties, but I don't like to be in pain or be depressed or alone. And the deal is, when you choose for the ego, you choose for the whole ball of wax. And the other concept I want to point out is that we're not only the hero of the dream, but we're also special. And what that means, it's me against something, me in relationship to something. But I'm the main character. They're the ones we have to fix or change or make better, because they're not as important or valuable as I am in this dream. And Ken would often say, it doesn't matter if you're especially good or if you're especially bad. It doesn't matter as long as I get to wear the honorary shield that I am special. So you know, like in school, I can remember some kids were really good students, and other kids, they would, you know, misbehave. And when they would misbehave, they'd get in trouble. And lots of people would think, well, why doesn't he just behave? But he was getting some attention. So he didn't really care if he was the bad guy, as long as he got the ability to become the hero of his dream. And again, it doesn't matter if you're talking about your nighttime dream or if you're talking about your daytime dream. We are almost always the center of the experience that's taking place. So with that, I'm going to read a little section. It's in the text on page 17, if anybody would like to read along. It's in chapter 2, section 1, paragraph number 3. So the Garden of Eden, or the pre-separation condition, was a state of mind in which nothing was needed. When Adam listened to the lies of the serpent, all he heard was untruth. You do not have to continue to believe what is not true unless you choose to do so. All that can literally disappear in a twinkling of an eye because it is merely a misperception. What is seen in dreams seems to be very real. Yet the Bible says that a deep sleep fell upon Adam, and nowhere is there a reference to his waking up. The world has not yet experienced any comprehensive reawakening or rebirth. Such a rebirth is impossible as long as you continue to project or miscreate. It still remains within you, however, to extend as God extended his spirit to you. In reality, this is your only choice because your free will was given you for your joy in creating the perfect. All right, so in the Garden of Eden, or the pre-separation condition, was a state of mind in which nothing was needed. And, you know, I think one of the beautiful things about our practice of the Course is we'll eventually not have to be in the struggle of always constantly trying to figure out how to make the world right and how to do things and so on. Because when you're aligned with truth, it's going to flow. It's not going to be the conflict any longer. And conflict comes from the belief in separation. So when Adam listened to the lies of the serpent, all he heard was untruth. And understand that choosing for the ego was choosing for untruth. We had truth, we left truth. We didn't have anything we needed to do, and now we get to do it all on our own. And we can't count on God to help us because we don't trust him. You do not have to continue to believe what is not true unless you choose to do so. And I know I originally, especially when I started studying the Course, would hear lines like that. And I think, well, but I don't want to continue to listen to that. And yet we're so addicted to living in our world and in our dream of duality that we're not really that anxious to let go of it. We just like to, you know, like pretend like this side of the chart didn't live here and that everything would be the good stuff in my life. But we don't really want to go home. We just want to get rid of the things that irritate us and upset us. And the way this works is if you want to connect with that oneness and joy, you have to be willing to drop your attachment to the dream of duality. So what is seen in dreams seems to be very real. And I don't think there's absolutely any question that we would all agree that what appears to happen in our world feels extremely real. And, you know, whether it's good or bad, it feels real. And again, how do we interpret its reality? We interpret it through the senses of the body. And the senses of the body have been programmed, much like a robot, to support the thought system of the ego. And I also want to point out, I didn't mention this before, we have the sign of death here. And with this whole dream comes the concept of death, because in duality, there's a beginning and there's an end. In truth and oneness, again, it's eternal. So again, you bought the whole package. All of this comes with this package while you're dreaming a dream as a result of the ego. Yet the Bible says that a deep sleep fell upon Adam, and I've looked it up, it's in there, and nowhere is there reference to his waking up. So we've all fell asleep as one collective son of God. We then splintered it off into little itty bitty splinters, of which each splinter has both sides of the minds available to us. And I remember a number of times Ken showed us a chart like this. He basically said the circle is the representation of all possibilities that took place the moment of separation. And then each one of these little dots represents a possibility that any one of us could choose. So before we popped into the world, we chose one of these dots. And one of those dots represents our life. And the thing is that it doesn't matter if it's what one person might call a really good life or a really bad life, it still comes in the context of a dualistic experience of life. So no matter how good or bad it may appear to be, it's still coming from a choice of duality. So no matter how great life might be or how awful it might be, there's going to be some good, there's going to be some not so good, and it's going to end in death, and I'm always going to be the hero of the dream, and I'm always going to want to be special within the context of this. And one of the challenges of that is when we are being asked to drop the illusion, it's really a challenge to drop the illusion, because I believe the illusion is real. And I believe that what I think or feel in a particular situation or experience is truth. And why would I want to acknowledge that I'm, that I'm not right? So we're really not very willing to let go of our attachment, just move this for a second, our attachment to being me if I'm in conflict with somebody else. And I know Tashara brought up the president. In that particular scenario was her against the president. And for us to see somebody that we're not happy about, we don't agree with, and say, wait a minute, I'm willing to drop my entire investment in what I see, feel, experience in this scenario. And I want you to show me my brother through your eyes instead of through my eyes. And it's important for us to realize that through my eyes have been programmed to see the world through guilt, sin, and fear, separation, and kill or be killed. So when I'm willing to drop that, then I can be shown another possibility that isn't in my awareness as long as I cling to the world of duality. All right. Where did we leave off? All right. So again, the idea that is nowhere in the Bible did it reference that the Son of God or Adam woke up. And then it goes on to say the world has not yet experienced any comprehensive reawakening or rebirth. And certainly there have been and probably are spiritual people on the planet who experience or are much more in line with the oneness rather than the dualistic way of experiencing life. And but certainly there's a whole lot of the other kind where we have conflicts and fights and arguments 24 hours a day. Such a rebirth is impossible as long as you continue to project or miscreate. And the way we project or miscreate is to be aligned with the ego. And sometimes people will come in class and say, well, I projected a lot today. And what they're really saying is this character called me projected in the world. But this character called you doesn't project into the world. This character is a projection from the choice of choosing for the ego. And one of the characters within that projection is you, and then you against the scary things in the world or the nice things in the world. So it's not you, the character called me, that's projecting into the world. It's the Son of God who's chosen for the ego that is then projecting into the world, of which I'm one of the characters. And that's a real important thing. And as we go through in the next few weeks, we'll really concentrate a great deal around the idea of how attached to the body we are and how we formulate our decisions and the way we do things and the way we act in the world, believing that we have some control in regard to what's going on. When in truth, we're really just being operated by whatever puppeteer is engaged. And, you know, we speak of the ego side a lot, primarily because we're so identifying with the ego, that when we drop this, we'll automatically aligned with what truth is instead.
Hello, Marianne.
I hear a voice, yes.
Oh, you do? Oh, great. I was just going to say, could you put the chart to the screen so we get a screenshot?
Sure.
Thank you.
Actually, you know what? I will also eat. I think that's good. Is that good?
That's, thank you.
Okay. And actually what I can also do is I can take a picture of it and I will send an email to everybody. Okay?
Yeah, that's good. At least I can see.
Okay. All right. You good? All right. And next week I'll bring it so I can bring it up closer. It's probably a little harder back here. Anyways, so I just real quick question. Has everybody been getting my emails, reminder emails, by the way? I don't know if people get them or don't get them. I know Zita responded to one, so I know she got one, but has everybody been getting them? Just say yes, no? Okay, good. All right. Yes. Excellent. So if you don't get one, let me know and I'll make sure we find out why. All right. All right, so again, such rebirth is impossible as long as you continue to project and miscreate. And that's what we're doing all the time. We're projecting and we're miscreating via the choice of the ego identification, not because of what the hero's doing. Because no matter how hard the hero tries to be a good person in the world, it's never going to happen because he's identified with his ego. Not because he's not trying hard enough. It's not because he, doesn't have enough good things in his life, whatever, excuses or difficulties we may come up with. It's because we're aligned with the ego and we're not aligned with the Holy Spirit. That's the crux of everything that takes place. And the reason why we lack our experience of peace. All right, it still remains within you, however, to extend as God extended his spirit to you. So the way that happens is, again, I have to move this aside and then align with this. In reality, this is your only choice because your free will was given you for your joy in creating the perfect. So if you're busy about life trying to figure out which job, which spouse, which house, which we're all going to do and will continue to do, what Jesus is trying to help us understand is in reality, your real only choice is choosing between your ego and the Holy Spirit. Because whether you pick job A or B, depending on who you bring with you, it will turn out well or it won't turn out well. And if you've chosen for the ego, it's never going to work out because choosing for the ego is impossible to work out. So constantly try to refocus your thinking in whatever choices you have to make. And we all have to make choices in the world. But who do I want to bring with me as I make that choice? And it can be simply even picking up the phone. Who do I want to answer this phone with today? Do I want to be, stuck with my ego, or do I want to let that be behind and let the Holy Spirit flow through me as I express myself on the phone? So these don't even have to be moments of great conflict or confusion. They can be in the simplest ways that we walk through our lives in a normal everyday experience. All right, so we're going to go to paragraph number 4. All fear is ultimately reducible to the basic misperception that you have the ability to usurp the power of God. Of course, of course, you neither can nor have been able to do this. Here is the real basis of your escape from fear. The escape is brought about by your acceptance of the atonement, which enables you to realize that your errors never really occurred. Only after the deep sleep fell upon Adam could he experience nightmares. If a light is suddenly turned on while someone is dreaming a fearful dream, he may initially interpret the dream itself as part of his dream and be afraid of it. However, when he awakens, the light is correctly perceived as the release from the dream, which is then no longer accorded reality. This release does not depend on illusions. The knowledge that illuminates not only sets you free, but also shows you clearly that you are free. So all fear is ultimately reducible to the basic misperception that you have the ability to usurp the power of God. So we were aligned with the connection with God. We had the tiny mad idea of, I wonder what it would be like if I was on my own, if I could be God, if I could create like God. At which point, God gave us everything. He was on the throne. And we said, I want to be on the throne. I want to be special and different. At which point we kicked God off the throne and we got on the throne. And now there's a me and a God. And the God I then project onto is a God that's not loving, because I'm coming from a thought of fear, guilt, sin, and fear, like I did something wrong. We experience separation, not just from God, but then we project it into the world, and we're separate from everything else that happens in the world. And we experience sin, guilt, fear, death, projection, and we're all different. So we paid a pretty high price to separate from God. And, sometimes people say, well, what were we thinking? And I think the thing that we don't understand is that when we made that choice, we thought we were going to bring all the love with us and be on the throne and be in charge and be special and different. But it kind of backfired on us in the respect that we couldn't bring the love with us. So instead, we experienced life as the total opposite of what we had experienced when we were aligned with oneness. So we have to really understand that, so we become more motivated to be willing to drop the illusion, because it's hard to drop the illusion. We're very addicted to it. We think we're right. We think the other person's wrong. We're absolutely 100% they're wrong. And we want to, there's a place in the Course where it literally says, we will fight to our death to prove we're right instead of acknowledge that somebody else is right. And I would say, if we're experiencing this through what the body and the senses represent, we would 100% believe that we are right. Again, we'll bring up Tashara's comment about her experience with the president, not picking on the president, but whatever, in that, in her experience, in what her needs are and her importance and value she puts on life, she doesn't feel that he's in line with those experiences. And so she feels very justified to not align with what he has to say. And everything within the dream supports that she's right in her experience. And of course, if you asked him the same question, his response would be, everything according to my understanding of the world fits in with what I'm choosing to do at this time. And so that's the whole setup. And it creates this experience that looks like this. And as Tashara mentioned, or the story I told about Gloria, once Gloria saw the image of the president at that time as having emitting light, she couldn't see him the same way after that. And when we literally drop this, we're not going to see the same brother the same way. You know, and again, an example of Jesus dying on the cross. Most of the story explains that Jesus was dying on the cross and all these people did this stuff to him. And physically, that's the story that was shown. But from his perspective, since he was looking through the mind of oneness, he did not see them as being unloving. He saw them as someone who was calling for love that didn't know how to love. And his automatic response was then to love, versus our automatic response normally, which is not to be very loving. It's to be very attacking most of the time. And so often that comes up very naturally. We don't have to practice attack. It comes, you know, like someone walks in the room and bam, we're done, you know. I know you've all had that experience, and I know for sure I have and still do. It's just certain people, certain circumstances and situations can just trigger us in a split second. They can just look at us and it's done. And again, so much of that is the programming we have from having chose the ego. And the programming is kill or be killed. So of course the natural response in any normal experience will be kill or be killed if I'm threatened. And we can take this to the animal kingdom. You know, a lot of people say, oh, nature is so beautiful and whatever. But if you ever watch any of the nature shows and watch the animal go after its prey and it snaps its neck off. Well, yeah, that's the nature of the beast in the wild. Well, we don't necessarily snap the neck off of our prey, but we're really not coming from a place of love. And becoming aware of the fact that I have any kind of a unsettled feeling in relationship to someone else really represents I'm coming from here. And not to feel bad about it, because as the hero of the dream, I couldn't possibly have any other reaction to that as long as I'm aligned with the ego. It's impossible. But as I start to recognize and watch myself and see how I respond when I see somebody or somebody disrupts me or whatever the form it may show up in, and realize, wow, that's just if I respond from that, which we all will continue to do because we're on a roller coaster ride that's still going pretty fast, we're really feeding into the dream that we say we're really not happy about any longer. So it's not about feeling guilty if you recognize yourself responding from that place. It's about becoming aware by, normally we would be attached to ourselves. When we can step away from there and come up here and observe ourselves responding out of not love, that's where the healing starts to occur. Because when I can observe myself from afar, I'm no longer the self. And though that doesn't sound like it's a big shift or change, it's a huge shift or change. Because when I identify with myself, I am within the context of the dream. And I just respond out of the ego thought system. When I can step above it and watch myself act in the dream, I can then separate myself from being the dream or being the dreamed in the dream or the hero in the dream. And that actually brings about healing because I'm no longer projecting into the world when I'm here observing. When I identify as the me, I'm constantly projecting into the world, rolling out the carpet of time, continuing this sad story that we all play in.
Marianne.
Right. Yes?
Yeah, I want to say about the Trump and the inner Trump again. The
Okay, yes.
stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sweeping stuff up under the rug and seeing that what the gift my brother brings me. For me,
absolutely.
Seeing the sameness. You know, I don't like Ken says, we don't understand the oneness, but I can see the sameness. And
Right.
what I saw was that my own struggle with authority, power, and what was it? I think I mentioned it to you, Miriam. Authority, power, but anyway,
right,
yeah,
really my all of those. Yes.
Yeah, struggle with God and my discomfort with it, and looking at him, you know, projecting that on him. It's like, wow, what a perfect place to wipe my dirty you know,
Yes.
project, put on all this hatred,
Yes.
and to bring it back and to see that it's my own, and to see my own the relationship with it, and the fear of dealing with those emotions. It's like a what is it, a tyrant of a child that I want to push away and get away from.
Yes.
There it is out there. Everybody agree with me? It's a terrible thing, right? Let's stay out there, you know. But when I bring it and see, wow, that's me.
Yes, and I would say it takes some spiritual maturity to come to the realization, wow, that's me. And I've often felt like if I see something in somebody else that I don't like, I need to go back to the drawing board and find out what I'm still attached to, or what's within me that needs to be healed. And it doesn't necessarily, reflect the same picture, but somehow they're triggering something within me that needs to be healed in me. And I can hate them forever, but it's not going to heal within me. And sometimes the most difficult people in our lives are the biggest gifts. I was listening to a spiritual talk the other day, and this fellow was saying that this one pretty advanced person chose this difficult person to go on this trip with him. And the other person said, well, why did you choose him to go along with you? And this fellow said, because he's going to bring up the most things in me, and that's really what I really need to work on. Well, it takes a while for us to come to the point where that's how we're playing the game, because normally we want to get far away from people that upset us as possible. But in truth, those are the people that are really going to bring to the surface the fact that I still have disruptive experiences within me. And they're really showing me what's going on, because without them, literally without our brother, we don't know that I'm still aligned with my ego. Okay, so they're our gift. A little hard to take sometimes, but they're literally our gifts. So send them flowers. And I also know as an ego, it's not something I'm looking for, but in my spiritual growth, it's definitely something that's probably required, because I don't know what's going on in my mind until I know that I can lose my peace. So they really are my gift.
Marianne?
Yes.
Hi, this is Zita.
Hi.
Hi. I can hardly hear because I'm in my car, but
Okay.
I was, finally got my hair done after 10 weeks. Yeah, beauticians are an essential worker for me, but
Yeah.
so I finally got my hair done. It was a new person, and we got into a discussion, and she was saying, well, what is going to make these people, and she was talking about people, a certain kind of person,
Right.
give up their hatred of these other people. And he says, it seems like that's all they ever do is hate on other people and kill other people because of something they see. And I said, well, the answer depends on where you're coming from in the first place. You could talk about politics. She likes to talk about history, apparently. So she was running down all this history of this and that, and people were taking in votes, and then I realized when I was talking or listening to her that a lot of ascended masters, or so-called ascended masters, they see the world as perfectly perfect. And how far am I from seeing that? Pretty
exactly. Well, you're as far as the next thing that comes in your life that shows you've lost your peace. And
yeah, but I wanted to mention that with Trump, I have a friend, she's a minister. She says, don't talk about my brother. And she would be the last person you would expect to say that, because I'm sure she didn't vote for him. But she said, don't talk about my brother. And that triggered in me the numerous times in the course. It's probably over 2,000 times where the course mentions your brother.
oh yeah.
And if I put whoever it is I'm having difficulty with in that spot, then I can have a different point of view. But on the other hand, I don't need, for me, I don't need a negative example
No.
all the time, so-called negative example, to make progress, because some of the things that are, to me, the most seductive in keeping me in the illusion are the good things. You know, I'm getting rewards for something at work. I'm getting rewards from, you know, my partner. You know, they're stroking me all the time. To me, that's a much more difficult projection of the ego to unravel than the things that are so-called negative. Well, oh, that person killed somebody. Well, I don't really relate to that, you know, but you see what I'm saying?
Well,
So,
yep.
so it's, even if I'm pointing out a politician as an example, that's already reinforcing the separation to me.
Yep.
And the idea of healing that viewpoint, sometimes this idea of healing contains an egoic idea of the self. It's very tricky. So when that woman asked me that question, I realized it had so many different permutations. And from this energetic level that I experience every day, actually the answer is not really going to be here.
Well, and that's the point. It's not going to be here. And that's one of the reasons I made this chart depicting lots of good things and lots of what we call not so good things, because all of these can pull us in. All of them are seen through the lens of the hero called me and my specialness. And any one of them can pull me away from connecting with the love of God. And I can remember one time at the foundation, we were talking about Jesus, and Ken had us go back to our rooms, and he said, I want you to write down your relationship with Jesus. And of course, everybody had slightly different relationships with Jesus, but for the most part, for myself anyways, Jesus was above me. You know, I was the schmuck,
Yeah.
he was the goody, you know. And over here, Jesus and I are just the same, just as Hitler and I are just the same. Well, that's going to take some, you know, redoing of my thinking and letting go of even someone that's better than me, because we're either all the same or we're different. And if we're seeing the lens of difference through anything, I'll get to in a minute, Bob, through the lens of difference in any way, I'm still over here. So it's a good point. And I think, you know, initially when we first start practicing the course, there's enough stuff that's pretty heavy and negative, what we're calling negative. I even hate to use that word, but we'll use it. It's heavy and negative that we don't focus on the more, you know, good things in life. But I think as you get through the heavy load, I guess you could say, then you start to realize I can be pulled in just as much with the positive as I can with the negative. And
yes, and that's in that story you told where the man he decided he was very comfortable, you know, he was drinking and he just sat on down. That was good.
yeah,
And he had a dream. That was good.
yes,
But both are anchored in some sort of
yes,
deception or illusion,
right. Yeah.
or delusion.
Right. Because if I go to a restaurant and I have a delicious meal, I don't just live in the moment of that delicious meal. The next time I want to go out, I want to have that same delicious meal. I want it to taste exactly the way it tasted the last time. And it seldom ever will, because it was a momentary experience. And, you know,
Yes.
those can be very, you know, huge ways to be trapped in the illusion as well. Yep.
I'll say something that stood out for me with something Zita said was that need. That's a red flag for me. I think I know what I need.
Yes.
Right.
You know, I think I know what's going to serve me, and I don't know nothing. I'm finding I don't know nothing, and that's what I'm, you know, afraid to let go into the don't know. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of that blank space.
Yep.
Don't know.
Okay. And, you know, the prayer we say, I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent him who sent me. Is that how we live our lives? No. You don't start your day by saying, okay, where do you want me to be? And we start the day with, I got to do this and I got to do that. And why didn't I get that done? And blah, blah, blah. And we just go crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Bob, you have something. Go ahead.
Yes, I got a couple things.
Okay.
That the first thing is that whatever upsets you is yours, and you need to take it to the Holy Spirit. and give it to the Holy Spirit.
Yep,
And,
definitely.
and also, I have a question that going back to this circle with those dots, and you pick out a dot,
Yep.
right? Does
Mhm.
that dot mean that controls your whole life in the ego world?
Pretty much, Bob, because you're Bob and you're such a certain height and you're a man and you're this and you're that and you live in this, world and whatever. And obviously within the context of that particular choice, you have the semblance of, I can choose this job or that job or whatever. But the bottom line is all of those dots are run by the thought system of the ego
But
and the
according
duality.
No, but according to what Ken Wapnick says in one of his DVDs, if you're going to pick out a shirt to wear, a color shirt, the blue, you already picked out that blue shirt.
Well, yeah, because
This
it's
is all.
right,
So,
because
so
it's
I'm
not
saying, what freedom do I have?
the only freedom you have. I just read it. The only real, in reality, this is your only choice to choose between the ego and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Yes, and the reason why you already picked out the shirt is because it's this that's operating this puppet called Bob. So Bob isn't really picking out the shirt. The thought of separation is what's picking out. It had already picked out the shirt.
And so are these thoughts in my subconscious mind
Absolutely.
that I picked out those thoughts?
It's like if you think about, when we were growing up, they had the old reel movies and the teacher would play the movie in class for whatever reason. And it's already all on there. Now we're going to view it on the screen. So what we're doing is viewing it on the screen, thinking that character that's in the movie called Bob is who I am. But that's the whole idea of the course is, this isn't who you are. This is who you are. And this is coming from this thought system. And as we look at the thought system via the effects of the choice, we start to recognize what choosing that thought system has brought us. And as we become aware of the results of that and realize, no, this really wasn't all it was cracked up to be, I'm willing to drop this to find out what his answer is. Kind of like what Tashara said, here I am, what do you want?
No. Okay. All through my life, I have to make choices, and sometimes I would make the wrong choice. And when I made the wrong choice, I had a feeling in the inside I made the wrong choice.
Okay.
And then I go back to make the right choice. And when I make the right choice, I have the feeling that was the right choice to make. Where is it? Where is this coming from? This feeling, is that coming from that dot in the circle, or?
Well, it is coming from the dot on the circle because everything comes, and you could say the dot on the circle is a splintered off part of this choice, okay? Because this was the Son of God as one. Before it projected into the world, we splintered out into individual little dots. Each dot has both of these thoughts in them, or choices in them.
Yes.
And so that thought, that dot, is going to be reflected into the world. And for each instant of that dot's experience, they have a choice to be here or here. And that's the only real choice we have. Though while we're identified with being the hero of the dream, we think we're hot tomatoes and we make all these wonderful choices. And if you're successful, it's because all the good things I've done. And then you look at somebody who's not doing too well and you say, hey, they're just not working hard enough or whatever. So it's all part of the choice of the dot. And maybe this time you'll choose that dot, another time you'll choose a dot where you're in poverty or whatever. And so it doesn't really matter which dot we're playing in. What's really most significant is which choice do I choose from the perspective of the dot that I've chosen.
Okay, so does that mean that when I had this feeling I've made the right choice, that's coming from my higher mind? Is that what you're saying?
It could be, and
But it's still part of the ego.
Ken was always very cautious, I guess is a word to use, to look at, and maybe the choice for what you said was the wrong choice was to push you in a direction that you were ready to go to, even though it was uncomfortable. So he was always very cautious about, listening for voices and things like a lot of spiritualities talk about, because he said we can be so quickly pulled into the ego message and think we're following the Holy Spirit, when in essence we're really continuing along the lines of the ego. So
This is not a choice.
not really a choice. Yeah.
This is a feeling.
Yeah. Well, I understand, but again, who's got the feeling? This
Right.
vehicle, this
Right.
body. Yes. And the it's all wrapped in there pretty tight. So it's hard to really pinpoint and respond from, yes, this is good, or not good. That's not probably the best word, but this is in line and this is not in line. But I would say, as we keep practicing and we keep dropping this, that response will start to become a clear response of just a knowing. And I know you've had experiences of feeling like you just knew. So you could have been tapped in, but I'm not absolutely positive.
Yes. Yes, and also sometimes when we would go on the trips, and we're trying to find a certain place in a city that we've never been to,
Yes.
I would tell Pat to be quiet, and I could feel I should turn here and I should turn there and there, and then I wind up where I was supposed to, where I wanted to be by the feelings. But if she talked and interrupted us, well, then I couldn't find it.
Right, right. And as you were saying that, the thought popped into my mind of, literally, this is the mind that's still. And it sounds like you're able to find that stillness so that that answer could come forth. So I would say that if that's not 100% the effect of this, it's a stilling of your mind that's taking you closer to that.
Yes. So you're saying I'm halfway there.
You're half cooked, Bob. All right. Anybody else have a comment before we continue in that paragraph?
Yes. To
Yes,
say,
your voice.
again, here it is. Yeah, I was listening to Ken, and he was giving all you have to do, one of those, all you have to do is whatever you're doing, is to think about purpose. It's whatever I'm doing, is that bringing me, is that dislodging my identification with the world?
Yes.
Or, or is it bringing, is a choice bringing me more in touch with that, the other side,
Yes.
my specialness,
Yes.
your beautiful chart there. That's all that we have to do and look at, that this is a process that we're dislodging. And it's like Marianne's picture of that iceberg. We're bringing what's unconscious to consciousness.
Right.
And that's a big deal. And it's a slow process. And Ken warns not to bring the sledgehammer in. And that's brought about, for me, it's brought about by looking. And he says that again and again and again. We have to look, we have to look at, and that means looking at all these little things, these little irritations. What is that? And Byron Katie talked about it in that we see that these thoughts that we're at war with, these thoughts that make these images, and that it's like these pictures on the screen, and I'm at war. I'm in the movie theater looking at shit on the screen and trying to change it, having all kind of attitudes and going through all this stuff about these images that I'm looking at on the screen.
Yep. Yeah. And I sometimes, were you finished? I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yes.
Okay. I sometimes think if we could come to the place where we could just be, the play would end a lot faster. It's that it's like a football game. We know each quarter is 15 minutes long, but there's all these timeouts. So we get a timeout. Okay, well, I have to be in charge over here and over here and over here. And we're just extending that 15-minute time space. And we're continuing it for who knows how long, because we think we need to be in charge. And we can be in charge all we want, and it will never affect who we really are, but it will extend our experience of the separated, choice.
My inner Trump wants to be in control.
Absolutely it does. Well, there you go. That's beautiful.
But
Yeah.
not responsible.
There you go. There it is right there. I want to be in control, but I don't want to be responsible. And that's why I make me the innocent victim and somebody else the problem. And again, this doesn't have to be a person. It could be your car or your toaster or that bird crapping on your car or whatever it happens to be. Doesn't matter what the form is. I'm an innocent victim of the circumstances beyond my control. A lie. All of this comes from my mind. Both of these characters are in my mind. And they're there as a result of choosing for the opposite of love. And again, within the dream, there's all the good, all the bad. It's all coming from my mind. And when we wake up from a nighttime dream, where do all those characters go? The only one that remains is me. Isn't that interesting?
I was going to invite Donald Trump on our vacation. I don't think Lynn would appreciate it too much.
What did you say?
Okay.
Yeah, I said I was going to invite Donald Trump on our vacation. I don't think Lynn would appreciate it though. So.
Well, and then then there's the other way of looking at it. You don't want to invite somebody that you're really not ready to handle yet. So they may show up, but you don't need to invite them quite yet. But ultimately, if we could literally use anything that upsets us or irritates us as a wonderful opportunity to learn and grow, it's there. But if you're not ready to do it, that's probably not the best choice.
So, Marianne?
Yes.
Could I clarify?
Sure.
So that just in the scheme of things, to just begin to entertain the idea that there's more here than meets the eye, that the character on the screen, that to let go of the idea for a minute that the character on the screen is who I am or who they are, to entertain that idea, that's how the body begins to become less important. And that's really what happens. It isn't that we can focus on Donald Trump as a savior or anything necessarily, but just that we start to loosen up the hold that our thoughts about things have on us, and that's how the body everyone's body begins to be less important. That there's more here than meets the eye between the bodies is the kind of giving it that little willingness to even think that there might be another way to look at how I think I'm always it, and that's not true.
Yes. And,
okay.
I think that was a good summation of it. And when I talk about the idea of our brother being our salvation, and again, we were talking about Trump, so I'll just use his name, but to use the fact that Trump or something else can trigger something other than peace within me is really all that means. And it doesn't have to be a Trump, it can be anything else that disturbs your peace. That's where the story begins of, I think my peace can be disturbed. Okay, that's a problem. Okay, I thought I was okay a few minutes ago. This showed up in my life. Now I've lost my peace. It has to be them or it or whatever. And to bring it back to no. It appears that way unequivocally within our dreams experience that it's something or someone that's disturbing my peace, but it's really because of that choice. And if we use it to filter through in that way, then we start to use anything and everything that comes up in our life. And then slowly we will just recognize the slightest little irritation, as the Course describes it, can remind us, oh, I got to go back to where this problem is and make a different choice here when I'm ready. Alrighty.
And it's good news that any kind of unsettled feeling can then trigger that question: who am I choosing? What child? What can I do now? Kind of, you do ask your ego, what can I do now? And then you know that you can't do anything in the world. Then that is kind of the Holy Spirit by default. Like, let's see what else. What else can there be? If it's not this or that, it's got to be
That
the
or
other,
that.
I guess. Okay, thank you.
And I think a lot of times, most of us will attempt to control the world, in a bazillion different ways. And the story is, when you're a little kid, you want to get through school. And then when you get through school, you want to go to college. And then you want to buy the house and the car and have a spouse. And then you want to have kids, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, eventually we start to recognize, I got all those things that I thought I wanted, but there's still that hole in my heart that is not being filled by anything that the world presents to itself. And much like Helen and Bill, who eventually came to the realization there must be another way, that's when we really are primed to be willing to drop our attachment of figuring out how to manipulate and formulate the world according to Marianne. And I'm willing to at least occasionally drop it and to find out what the truth is. But again, this takes practice, because this is my automatic. I don't have to work at this. It's just right there every morning, every day, all the day long. And to practice the dropping of this so that I can find out another choice or another answer takes some concentrated effort at this point in time.
Marianne,
Yes.
it's Helene.
Hey, Helene.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. If there's one thing that the Course has encouraged me to do, is to watch my thoughts like a hawk.
Right.
I know you mentioned a couple weeks ago how the process that you refer to works, and that we think we're making progress, whatever, and we're having, things are going along smoothly. And then there's like a leveling process. Then that left side of the chart comes up to meet you, because you're ready to move on and discover other things. And I'm watching one day this week, I go for a walk fairly early in the morning, before anybody else is up. So I go out the door, I'm talking to the Holy Spirit, and my thought is, okay, let's go. And I called him a name, and I'm not going to repeat it now, but it was nice. And I heard that, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm calling God that, I'm calling my brother that, and I'm calling myself that.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Yes.
And so it goes.
And so it goes. And
Yeah.
if you're over here instead of here, watching Helene do that and smile at it and go, wow, look at that. Helene is even attacking God. Isn't that just special? And the more we can come to the place where we can, observe that that's what's going on, and smile and think, wow, if I can say that, I can do anything, and it's still not going to take the peace and love of God away from me. And when we can come to that in a way of understanding that nothing over here can take that away from me, I can have the experience of this all I want, but it's not going to disturb the love of God, and that's pretty powerful. But yeah, I remember one time we're doing a workbook lesson, and halfway through the day, my mind had transposed the words. So I was literally all day long saying the opposite of whatever that particular workbook was. And it's like, it's sneaky, slippery, and we'll do whatever it can to slide in there. Yeah. And the more we can smile at it and go, well, yeah, of course, what would I expect out of being an ego, But that takes some spiritual maturity in my understanding of it, of coming to the place of just observing and not really judging or attacking, and just smiling at it. Yeah, because normally I think we're just so enmeshed in guilt, we're going to attack ourselves no matter what happens.
And I still do
Our
that.
MO.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So then it says, and we're in about the middle of paragraph 4. Only after deep sleep fell upon Adam could he experience nightmares. Well, even though part of this dream appears to be nice things, you know, there's a shiny car, a beautiful house, a little fellow with a dog and whatnot, and nice big delicious salad. The bottom line is this is still the nightmare, because compared to who we are in truth, this is so limited, it's so limiting that we're literally choosing, even in our quest for what we call good things in the world, we are limiting our ability to connect with wholeness. And if we really understood that, we would be much more willing to drop it. But again, we're so addicted to the ego thought system that we, will slowly begin to drop it, but it's not going to fall away in one moment, because like, we talked about the iceberg of, we only even know a little bit of the top part, and yet there's a whole lot more down under there. And slowly, as we chip away at it, the next layer appears, and then the next layer, and we start to trust the process a lot more, and so it becomes a bit easier. If a light is suddenly turned on while someone is dreaming in a fearful dream, he may initially interpret the light itself as part of his dream and be afraid of it. And I don't know if everybody's had the experience of having a nighttime dream. I remember, this is kind of embarrassing, but it's popping up, so I'm going to share it, where in the middle of my dream, I had to get up to go to the bathroom, and I guess I must have talked myself out of the fact that I was dreaming, and so the results were not too good. But the point being is that we can bring into the dream our belief of the light being fearful, because within the dream, the light is fearful. While I'm attached to the dream, this is my enemy. I've often thought of, you think about the right side of the chart and the left side of the chart, it's much like two opposing football teams. You're on this team, this team is your opposition. If you're on this team, that's the opposition. So whichever one we align to, we integrate into, and we become that. And we don't realize that choosing for love is the answer. And there's actually a section where Jesus talks about the idea of the fear of love. And I know almost everybody that comes to the course, when they first are introduced to that, they think, well, what are you talking about? I'm afraid of the love of God. That's ridiculous. Well, if I'm identified with something I'm not, something I am, and I'm attached to what I am as God, that's not comforting to me. And that's I think a bit of a challenge in the process of practicing and learning the course. It's like we're literally choosing for something that we really don't want yet. And so there's this internal deal going on all the time. And as we become more willing to drop the ego and we start trusting the Holy Spirit more, the light starts to dawn on us, and we're not as frightened by that light. But he goes on to say, however, when he awakens, the light is correctly perceived as the release from the dream, which is then no longer accorded reality. So in other words, the dream fades away, the light presents itself, or truth presents itself. So this release does not depend on illusions. And again, what this depends on is the dropping of the illusions. I don't have to figure out how to manipulate the illusions to make this happen. I drop the illusion to allow the truth to show forth. Okay, so we've spent all of our lifetime trying to manipulate the dream and try to figure it out, make it better, do this, do that. How many times have we tried to solve the same problem over and over and over, only to have it fail? And the reason is because we're looking in the wrong place for the answer to come forth. The knowledge that illuminates not only sets you free, but also shows you clearly that you are free. And again, the truth is that much like where's this one here? much like the cloud covering over the sun, the truth is here all the time. We've just covered it over by this thick cloud of our belief system of the ego. So despite the fact that it's here all the time, and it's always been here, and this is our freedom, since we cling to and identify with the ego, we don't allow that awareness to come forth. It takes my choice of dropping this in order to peek through and see this. So again, this is here. It can't help me change until I decide I don't want this any longer and I'm willing to let it go to find out what this is. Okay, anybody have any comments? Because we're going to switch to another section. So if anybody has any comments, you can put on your, take off your speaker. Anyone? No one? All right, you had your chance. All right, so we're going to move on to workbook number 167, paragraph number 8. So God creates only mind awake. He does not sleep, and his creations cannot share what he gives not, nor make conditions which he does not share with them. The thought of death is not the opposite of the thoughts of life. Forever unopposed by opposites of any kind, the thoughts, capital T, of God remain forever changeless, with the power to extend forever changelessly, but yet within themselves they are everywhere. So he says, God creates only mind awake. So basically what that means is what we made, and the course is very specific with the word usage, that God creates, and what we did was make a reality that appears to be real, but it isn't real. But God only creates mind awake. So he has nothing to do with this. This is all self-made from the choice of the ego. He does not sleep. Okay, so our true reality does not sleep either. So his creations cannot share what he gives not. In other words, we can't really be asleep. We can have the experience of being asleep, but in truth, we can't make ourselves be asleep, nor make conditions which he does not share with them. So nothing within the illusion has anything to do with what God made. This is all self-made, so it has to be self-unmade. The thought of death is not the opposite of thoughts of life. So within the context of the illusion, there is an experience we call birth. There's an experience we call death. And so we call birth, or the living of that life, what life is. And then we call the end of that experience death. What he's saying here is there's no opposite to life. In truth, there is no opposite to this. There is no death. There is no birth or death. There's eternity and oneness. It's only within the context of the illusion that we have the experience of life and death. Real life only exists here. Forever unopposed by opposites of any kind, the thoughts, again capital, of God remain forever changeless, with the power to extend forever changelessly, but yet within themselves, for they are everywhere. So again, this idea that once we chose to separate, we chose an experience though the Course describes it as in opposition to truth, as an example for us to be aware of it, in truth, the Course also says, it appears that there are two choices, but only one of them is real. Therefore, only one of them exists. But as long as we choose to identify with the ego, it will appear as though there are two choices. So truly, the limited choice of separation gives us less than everything and everywhere, but we think it's all there is. So paragraph number 9. What seems to be the opposite of life is merely sleeping. When the mind elects to be what it is not, and to assume an alien power which it does not have, a foreign state it cannot enter, or a false condition not within the source, it merely seems to go to sleep a while. It dreams of time, an interval in which what seems to happen never has occurred. The changes wrought are substanceless, and all events are nowhere. When the mind awakens, it but continues as it always was. So he's trying to describe the experience of our illusion or our sleeping, where he says what seems to be the opposite of life is merely sleeping. So this is a dream. Again, Jesus is symbolically in bed having, or not Jesus, the Son of God is symbolically sleeping in bed and having this dream. But just like when we wake up from a dream, nothing really happened. The dream is just this figment of our imagination, I guess you could call it. When the mind elects to be what it is not, and to assume an alien power which it doesn't have, a foreign state it cannot enter, or a false condition not within its source, capital S, it merely seems to go to sleep a while. But I'm going to go through that last sentence from the perspective of, while we think we are asleep, we are going to experience something that's not. We're going to assume an alien power. In other words, we're going to now be the hero of my dream instead of the Son of God and the effect of that. We're going to have a foreign state that isn't real, a false condition that is not part of the source, and all of this is the result of our sleeping. And again, a great deal of what the Course is all about is us understanding what occurred, why we fell asleep, what brought us to the point of falling asleep, and what the effects of falling asleep has brought us. Because, like, who's going to let go of I want to be right because it feels good? I think I'm right, and all those kind of things. But when you start to understand that what you're giving up by choosing to maintain those, then I believe our motivation will begin to shift and change, and we're going to be more willing to let go of those things, even though we really want to hold on to them. They're powerful. It dreams of time, an interval in which what seems to happen never has occurred. The changes wrought are substanceless, and all events are nowhere. So, I oftentimes give the example of if we were a little kid and we lived by the beach and we went out by the beach and we were digging in the sand and we make our big castles and we've got cars and people and we're just having a grand time playing in the sand, like Helene laying in the sun there. And then mom or dad starts calling us, we might hear this faint little voice in the background, but we're having such a good time. We continue to play and have a wonderful time. And then that voice gets a little louder because we're starting to get a little bit hungrier. And then we keep playing, and the voice gets louder and louder and louder. And then eventually we get pretty hungry and we go, time to go eat. And we leave the castle and all the cars and all the people and all the things we've made, and we go back home. And then a big wave comes along and just takes all our play away because it was nothing. Nothing. But while we're playing, it feels real. And again, while we're in the dream, we have a dream of time. We have a dream of an interval. What seems to happen never occurred. It's not real. Its changes wrought are substanceless. That's a hard word to say. Well, we think this is pretty substanced. I just made up another word, I think. Okay, while we're living here, this seems very valuable, very important, very vital, very whatever else words you want to use to describe it. But compared to who we are and what we are in truth, it's nothing. It's just a silly passing cloud in front of the sun. All right. But fortunately, this remains the same. And boy, that's the best news this course gives us, because this remains the same. Because man, I think if we could have messed it up, we would have done that one too. All right, so paragraph number 10. Who changes life because he shuts his eyes or makes himself what he is not, because he sleeps, oh wait a minute, because he images it. Who changes life, all right, let's try that again. Let us today be children of the truth, not deny our holy heritage. Our life is not as we imagined it. Who changes life because he shuts his eyes or makes himself what he is not, because he sleeps and sees and dreams an opposite to what he is. We will not ask for death in any form today, nor will we let imagined opposites to life abide even an instant where the thought, capital T, of life eternal has been set by God himself. So he says, let us today, children. He's talking to us like children because he's got more information than we do. He's not special and different from us, but he is more mature than we are, and he's gone through this, and he wants to help us understand how to follow in his footsteps. So he says, let us today be children of the truth and not deny our holy heritage. Again, if we have this, or we have this, we need to realize this is available and become aware that this has not really worked out all that well. It's not brought us love and separation and me being in control. It has brought the opposite in our experience of what love is. And when we get tired enough of this, maybe we'll be a little bit more willing to choose to reconnect with our true heritage. Our life is not as we imagine it. Well, dang, I got a whole lot of imaginings going on here, and none of them fit over here because all of them are in the opposite of what my images are here. And as we begin to be willing to understand that all my imaginings come with a lack of love, they come with a lack of connection and wholeness. And we all, we've all experienced up close personal relationships, which start out feeling pretty good and pretty nice, and we're drawn into them. But we all know that within the context of even our love relationships, there's oftentimes conflict or things that don't feel right and aren't experienced well. And they bring up issues within us. And that's because they're coming from a relationship of specialness. And I'm trying to specialness myself, the other person's trying to specialness themselves. We don't meet in the middle, I guess you could say. All right, there's somebody's got their mic on, so we'll see if we can unmic. All right. One more button. So let's see. So who changes life because he shuts his eyes or makes himself what he is not, because he sleeps? I'm just going to stop right there. I mean, think of like little kids. If you've ever been, out to a restaurant or something, and I have a tendency to kind of flirt with little kids. And sometimes the kids will close their eyes or they'll hide behind mommy or whatever. And it's kind of what we're doing, like I'm going to close my eyes and then I'm going to pretend God's not over there. And I'm going to play in my own little imaginary world. And that's really all what we're doing. We're playing in our imaginary world, but that imaginary world lacks the love that we're seeking. And as long as we're seeking for love and we're playing in the imaginary world, we're not going to find it. And closing our eyes is not going to solve the problem. Let's see, where am I now? Okay, so I'm going to start again. So our life is not as we imagine. Who changes life because he shuts his eyes and makes himself what he is not, because sleep and sees in dreams an opposite of what he is. So part of the, I guess you could say, practice unfolding of the course is to really get clear that the dreams of the opposite have not brought us what we're really seeking for. As long as, you know, all the things of the world pull us in, draw us in, complete us, I guess you could say, or we think they complete us, we're going to continue to move forward in that direction. As we start to recognize that, you know, even the most wonderful things in the world are going to die, and it can be a mountain or it can be something that appears to last for a very long time, but everything's going to end in death in this experience. And I don't think the Course or my words are meant to make us feel more depressed than we already feel in regard to this. It's just trying to help us understand that you've chosen a world of lack, and it's never going to be whole. And that doesn't mean you don't enjoy things in the world and have relationships and whatnot, but it is about using the things of the world and relationships of the world to understand, if I'm not experiencing love and peace in that experience, that I can choose to see it through His eyes instead of my eyes. And then my perception of whatever's going on will change. And that doesn't mean the scenario will necessarily change. It may or it may not, but that's insignificant. My understanding of it will change. And that's really where the healing comes in. All right, and he says, we will not ask for death in any form today. And if you notice on the chart, if you can see it well, and as I said before, I will send a copy of it attached to an email, so you can look for it, make a copy if you wish. Below the hero is the crossbar and the skeleton. And I put this here very purposely because choosing for the separated dream, we have bought birth, the concept of birth and death. We can't escape death as long as we identify with the ego. And I also found a little picture of the coronavirus I had to put on here as well, because that's so big in our world today. But it doesn't matter if it's the coronavirus or it's AIDS or if it's polio or if it's whatever else, you know, a flu or whatever it may be. We're always going to have things that appear to take our peace away physically, and we can find some way to solve one problem, another one will come forth, because this is a cycle of there's going to be something of which my ego needs to be upset about, and there's going to be something I have to point my finger at. And again, as Tashara commented before, if we take that thing, whatever that thing happens to be, and we take it within and understand that represents something within me. And she gave the example of she's the inner Trump where she likes to be in control. So we need to really filter everything that happens within the dream from what within me has got those attributes that I hate so much in that other person. And they're always some form of separating, and there's some form of limit that cause us to be in pain in regard to when that shows up. So remember, death comes with this party. It's a no-brainer, guys. You know, that's the setup. And we certainly, I think, all struggle with the concept of death, and we would like to make death go away, but we're not willing to relinquish our attachment to the thought system that death brings. Nor will we let imagined opposites to life abide, even an instant where the thought of the thought of life eternal has been set by God Himself. So again, if we can start to filter our understanding of what this is trying to help us understand, is that having chose this brings the opposites. It brings death, it brings suffering, it brings pain, you name it, all those kinds of things. So to me, that's a real strong motivation of, I want to drop this, whether it's an individual I'm having a problem with or just my general attachment to the choice of the separated dream. I want to find out how he sees this. It's way different than the way I'm experiencing this. And if we keep using the scenarios that come up in our lives that take our peace away, it doesn't matter what form they come in, use those as an opportunity of, okay, my experience is, and then, you know, write your journal or whatever it is, write your story. But then when you're ready, drop that and say, okay, show me how you see this. Because right now, this feels extremely real to me. As we read earlier, it does feel real. It feels like this is all there is. But as we continue to invite the other way to be shown to us, we will then begin to look at the world from a totally different perspective. And again, that might mean it changes on the outside. It doesn't necessarily have to change out the outside, but you will have changed on the inside and you will experience it differently on the outside. Yes, I hear a voice.
Yeah, and it's Tashara.
Yes.
Yeah, and we don't let it go until we let it go.
Yes,
Until we're
correct.
really tired, because I had a girlfriend sometime, and she was like, well, you just take the good with the bad. That's
Yes.
and we can acclimate and get real used to, well, it's just seasons, and you just adjust to that. But until you get tired, sick and tired, as they say in 12 steps, sick and tired of being sick and tired, and really seeing that I don't know, the what is it, that fun side of the chart equals the other side, that I'm buying, the whole thing, and it's just not of any value to me anymore. Do you let it go?
Yes. Yes, and I think, again, there's many spiritualities out there that do focus on all the positive. And yes, if you're not very comfortable, focusing on the positive can make you feel better for a time, okay? And I'm not discounting that, nor am I suggesting that may very well be the way people may journey through this. But there'll come a point in time in your experience where you realize that, yes, I like this way better than I like this, but even this does not fill me as I want to be filled or I need to be filled now. And that's when we get to the point where we're really willing to be, to choose this more and more frequently. And again, we have to respect everyone's journey, and everybody is exactly where they need to be. And maybe you need to be over here and they need to still be doing the positive thing, and that's perfectly fine. But we have to really question what feeds me and what do I need at this point. Yep. All right, paragraph 11. Yes, we done?
And forgive myself, that's fine with me, because we come from a lot of disciplines
Yes.
that have well, I should know better by now, or it should be better. Gosh, I'm how old now and I haven't gotten this, and forgiving myself for, it's okay.
Yes.
I'm afraid.
Yes.
Rose will always remind us,
Yes.
I'm afraid of that other side.
Yes, that is so true. And, that's such a vital concept and point, Tashara, because I think once we start practicing the Course, we start to intellectually understand a bit of the Course. What we have a tendency to do is take the blue book and whack ourselves over the head with it, because as you said, well, I've been working on this Course for X amount of years. I should know better than that. And the bottom line is, you are going to respond by the consciousness of which you filter through automatically. So if it's less than love, just use that as an awareness of, oh, I guess I'm still aligned with the ego. Help, I want to see what truth is. But what we normally do, and I'm really good at it, is we browbeat ourselves bloody because I should have done that in another way. And the facts are I didn't, because that's not really where I am. And the more I can love myself exactly where I am on this journey, the more likely the chance of me opening to the truth will occur. And I like to think of it as a child learning how to walk. That little baby can watch all the big people walk walk across the room. And one day he sees that chair on the other side of the room and he thinks, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on that chair and I'm going to get up and walk across that room. And he tries to stand up and he falls down. Maybe he scratches his knees and bleeds and he cries for a long time. And then he gets back up and takes another step and falls down, and then another step and falls down. But what we do is when we fall down, because we think intellectually we know better, we just take a big hammer and we just beat ourselves bloody instead of realize part of the process, maturing, developing the muscles for us to get across the room or to get over here is I'm going to fall and I'm going to have to get back up. I'm going to fall and I'm going to get back up. And the more gently we can do this, the more we open to that connection of love. And the more we, hate ourselves, attack ourselves, browbeat ourselves, we're saying, love, stay away, all by ourselves. It's a process, though. Definitely a process. All right, so paragraph number 11. His holy home we strive to keep today as he establishes it and wills it forever and ever. He is Lord of what we think today, and in his thoughts, which have no opposite, we understand there is one life and that we share with him, with all creations, with their thoughts as well, whom he created in a unity of life that cannot separate in death and leave the source of life from where it came. So what Jesus is saying is, he started out with a description of what it means when you've chosen the opposite, and how we've chosen for a lie, and we've made things the opposite of what they really are to survive in time and in the world. But in this paragraph, he sort of starts to change it around. His holy home we strive to keep today as he establishes and wills it forever and ever. So he's saying, drop this and I'll show you what this is like, but you have to be willing to drop this. But this remains ready for you when you're ready. He is Lord of what we think today. And in his thoughts, again, capital T, which have no opposite, we understand there is one life and that we share with him, with all creation, with their thoughts as well. And so, in other words, when we align with this, we have to bring our brother and everything else that we deal with over here with us. And then we'll see ourselves as one and as the same. It's only when we identify with the dream of the ego that we're going to see things as different and separate from us, and they are not going to be seen clearly. So that's why when we drop this, we have to drop the entire investment of who's right, who's wrong, who's whatever, because as long as I think I'm going to come over here and align with God, it's not going to happen. I have to be willing to drop this, to have a clean slate, to be shown a different way of looking. Let's see. He created a unity of life that cannot separate in death and leave the source of life from where it came. So again, he created the life of eternity. We made the world of separation and death. And it's only when we drop the belief in separation and death that we can align with the source of life. All right, we have one more little paragraph and then we will say goodbye. All right, so paragraph 12. We share one life because we have one source from which perfection comes to us, remaining always in the holy minds which he created perfect. As we were, so are we now and will forever be. A sleeping mind must waken as it sees its own perfection mirroring the Lord of life so perfectly it fades into what is reflected there. And now it is no more a mere reflection, becomes the thing reflected and the light which makes reflection possible. No vision now is needed, for the wakened mind is one that knows its source, itself, its holiness. Boy, what a nice way to end. But I'll read just a little bit through the paragraph. So we share one life because we have one source. So again, duality 2, source 1. Okay, that's where our problem is. We thought there was more than one. And then we splintered out and made lots and lots of 1s and 2s. In oneness, there's nothing to argue about. There's no conflict. There's no comparison. There's no one's better than the other. There's only one. So we share one life because we have one source, a source from which perfection comes to us. Just think, we've all been trying to be perfect in a world that can't be perfect. what we have to do is drop the world of imperfection to find out what perfection is. Okay, so source from which perfection comes to us, remaining always in the minds which he created perfect. So again, that perfection is available when we remove the ego. I should go this way. When we remove the ego, we can see the perfection that has always been there and always will be. Alrighty, as we were, so we now and will forever be. A sleeping mind must waken as it sees its own perfection mirrored the Lord of life so perfectly, it fades into what is reflected there. And I'm thinking what this means is when we initially see our reflection in a pond or something, we don't recognize it, we don't see it clearly, we don't understand it. But as we become aware that that reflection in my brother, as Helen said, my brother, myself, and God are all reflecting the same things. And if I'm coming from the dream of separation, it's always going to reflect separation, guilt, sin, and fear, and death. And when I awaken to what truth is, then I will see my brother clearly, myself clearly, and God clearly. And now it is no more a mere reflection. It becomes the thing reflected and the light which makes a reflection possible. No vision now is needed, for the awakened mind is one that knows its source, capital Self, itself, capital S, and its holiness, capital H. So we will connect with Source, our true self, and our holiness, and our brother will come with us because we can't go there without him. All right, so that's it for today. Real quick announcement. I guess Zoom has upgraded things and everybody needs to be on 5.0 on Zoom. And if you don't know if you are, you can go next to where it says stop video and go into your video settings and where, I think it's statistics, is that it? Yes, if you go into statistics, if you can find that on your on your Zoom thing, at the very bottom, it'll say version. And if it doesn't say 5.0, then you'll need to upgrade it. And usually what will happen is when you close out Zoom, a little box will come up and it'll say upgrade Zoom. So if you're not on 5.0 and it comes up, make sure you click that you want an upgrade. Does everybody understand that? Anybody have a comment, concern about that? Because apparently it'll continue to work through May 30th, and then afterwards you might have trouble getting on the call. I don't know what'll happen. We'll turn purple or something. Who knows? All righty. So,
actually, what you were just saying.
Yes.
I have I'm watching on a MacBook.
Okay.
And on the top corner,
okay.
There's a little apple. If you go to zoom.us,
okay,
and it should be, there's a check for updates right there, so you can probably just click on that. And
okay, would you repeat that again? Thank you. I appreciate very much what you said, but would you repeat it?
So I'm on a MacBook right now, and in the left corner there's an apple, and to the right next to that it says zoom.us.
Okay.
If you click on that, it'll open up a menu. And on that menu, it says check for updates. So that should check for updates and take care of any updating it needs.
Thank you, Vince. I really appreciate that because I just automatically upgraded mine a while back and I didn't even know how you could check or whatever. So very good. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. So we are going to end.
Other thing, well, my device, it alerts me when I try to sign in. It'll let you know.
Right. Well, that's what I think most of them do, but I just wanted an alternative if it didn't happen to work that way. And I know there's different devices that operate differently, so I appreciate it very much that Vince knows more than I do about that, which isn't a whole lot for my case. So, all right. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Yes, Bonnie.
I'm on a iPad and I don't see how to update it.
Okay.
Yeah, the iPad, with the iPad, it, when I tried to check in, it would automatically, but if I get the information, I'll send it to you, Marianne. You can send it to her.
Okay, so it automatically what?
Acts, it let you know that they were upgrading, and it gave you the option.
Oh, okay. So whenever you close out of Zoom, it'll pop up a box that'll ask for an option to update. Is that what you're saying?
No, that when I checked in, when you.
Oh, when you checked in. Okay. All right. So
It
Bonnie,
didn't, it didn't ask.
you didn't ask. Okay.
I'll look and see if
Okay.
I'll send it to Marianne.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you, Sarah. I appreciate it very much. Okay, great. All right, so let me see. I see a chat here. I want to make sure whatever that got addressed. Love you. All right, just a message to me. Okay, so we are going to now say our prayer, and after the prayer, I will stay online for a couple minutes. If anybody wants to ask any questions or anything, feel free to stay on. All right, so I want to give you. Oops, I guess I better mute because we're noisy. All right, where are we? Whoops, wrong thing. Guess I'm not gonna mute because something else hit instead. So we'll just wing it. Okay, so take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen. Okay, I hope to see everybody next week. Have a good week.
Thank you, everybody.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Marianne.
Thank you so
welcome.
Thank you.
much.
You're welcome. Good to see everybody.
Have a nice holiday, everybody.
You too. That's right. Thank you. I wrote that down and my paper fell on the floor and I forgot. So thanks, Marty. Yes, happy holidays for everybody. All righty.
Hi, Marianne. This is Ben.
Ben, hi.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for such a beautiful, exquisite class as usual. I just have a quick question.
Sure.
And it's more about, I guess, the writing of the Course in Miracles. To what degree would you consider it just an in-depth analysis of, in some ways, what appears in Genesis? Because I feel like a lot of like the idea of the fundamental ideas of the Course, like we fundamentally fear God, we have chosen, we choose death, and we don't want love, and the whole idea of like the idea of crucifixion, like we somehow are the innocent victim. I'm wondering if that all actually happens in Genesis, and to what degree is the Course in Miracles sort of like an in-depth analysis of Genesis?
Well, I would say that in a lot of ways, the Course is here to correct what a lot of the things that were in the Bible. So in other words, oftentimes, like for instance, it talked about Jesus, or not Jesus, the Son of God fell asleep. But there's not a lot of expression around the idea of what that sleep meant and how that sleep came about and why the Son of God chose that sleep. And then there's places in the Bible where it'll say that, God kicked Adam and Eve out of the kingdom, and then he put their angels on all sides so they could never come back in. And it was always the son did something bad, but God was part of that storyline, I guess you could say, and he wouldn't let them out, where the Course is saying we made this choice and had nothing to do with God, and that we can now choose to reconnect with God whenever we start to understand that having chosen for the ego was not our best choice.
Thank you. So the Course in Miracles is like, I guess, a creative response to, like Jesus' creative response to Genesis.
Well, I would say that, I mean, most of us are aware that the Bible wasn't written to very long after the time of situations actually occurring. And we know that if we play that telephone game where I whisper something to Helene and she says it to the next person and the next person, usually by the time it comes back, the story's been changed and shifted and so on. And that I personally believe that Jesus 2,000 years ago came to tell this story only because there's been so many changes and shifts and ego interpretations along the way, that the story that was meant to be told has morphed into something that is not any longer what he came to teach. And that through the Course, he has, reestablished the foundation of what his real teachings were. And he even spoke, and I know I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we were working with the Jesus material about the crucifixion, that even the disciples, even though they were walking with him every day and he was teaching them every day, that they would not understand a lot of the things that he was teaching because they were looking through their egos and it was impossible for them to see clearly. And so the Course is just kind of another form, another way of bringing us back to that connection with what he really had to say. And since you're fairly new, I'll just mention this as well. And Ken would say that at one point in time, Jesus, there's a line in the middle of this, okay? And that Jesus represented this, the egos represented this, but eventually they, I can't erase it because this isn't erasable, but we started to mar that line and jump back and forth and mesh them together. And Ken would say that again, within the context of the Course, there's a delineation that can't be crossed from one side or the other. But many people that study the Course are going to do the same thing, not because they're bad, not because they're trying to misrepresent the Course per se, but because they're egos who can only see through that lens. And so, the purity of the words get shifted and changed, again, not because people are trying to be bad or whatever. It's simply they can only see it through the lens they can see at that time. Of course, you can't crucify the Course. You can throw it in the garbage and you can rip it apart, but the words still remain the same. And I think many people that have studied the Course for any length of time, there'll be things within the Course that challenge them and they can't quite grasp them. Or even doing the workbook lessons. As you start going through the workbook lessons, you will, maybe be challenged by some of the words that are in there, and then you might do it another year or two later, and then you go, wow, why did I have problems with that? That makes perfect sense now. Because the words are already always true. Our understanding and interpretation of them will shift and change as we mature and grow and understand what the value of what the Course is about. Did that help?
Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you. And for me, all the message of the Course is, it just seems almost like, it's very easy to understand and it's very easy to just intuit, like, it seems like it just feels right. But of course, the hard part is to practice it. So thank you.
Yes. And, again, that's the other thing that we have to understand, that we're literally all coming from a different place when we step into the Course situation. And some people will struggle to understand some of these concepts. Other people will step in and all of a sudden it's just like all the pieces come together. And that really is a representation of, where we are in consciousness when we come into the Course. And perhaps in another lifetime, you understood that on a higher level than another person does. So we're all, we're literally all on our own in this, as far as what we are, how we come in and what we have to embrace and understand. And then, as you said, even if I understand it intellectually, putting it into practice, now that's a whole nother story. But,
Yes. Thank you
Ben,
for taking the time.
sure.
Yes. Hi.
Ben, if I can jump in here for a minute, you
Sure.
started your question by asking if the course was some kind of analysis of the book of Genesis. And I just want to throw in that for me, the course is something to be experienced as opposed to understood or analyzed or something like that, if that's of any help to you.
Right.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And I
Thank
think,
you.
you know, and I always, how do I want to say this? I always hesitate to, how do I want to say this? I believe you have to intellectually understand what the course is talking about, and then as you live it, as Helene was saying, it then becomes an experience. But without ever understanding what the course, the setup of the course, then I don't think we would get to that experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hesitate when somebody says it's all about experience, which yes, it ultimately, absolutely. And once you've had an experience, you know, the rest is like, oh, wow, yeah. But I think if you don't really grasp the understanding behind the course first, then that kind of takes away from that.
When I first came into the course, I started, when I first got the book, I started doing the lessons.
Okay.
And without having read the text. And it wasn't until I read the text and got the metaphysical background, like where the course is coming from, that things began to change for me.
Yes, right.
And I just like saying that the course is the metaphysics of it, the way it's written, it like connects your ego, it befuddles your ego while it works on you.
Absolutely. I think even the word usage for a lot of people is a bit challenging.
Absolutely.
I think he's trying to mess our minds up so he can sneak a few things in there. And at first it's like intellectually really hard to grasp and understand it, but as you understand, oh, that's perfect. He's trying to slip one in when intellectually I would be fighting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Glad you were on the call.
Thank you.
All right. Checking out, folks.
Bye, sweetie. Take care.
Bye.
So Ben, were you able to see the charts and everything?
Yes, your new
good.
chart. It looks amazing. How do you make all those amazing charts? They're just so creative and detailed.
If you only knew.
They're just so beautiful and just
Thank you.
so well organized and
Thank you.
clarifying.
Actually, I usually start with getting an idea, and then it's like I'm not in charge. It just keeps playing with me, and it takes way longer than I ever wanted to take, but it starts to come together. And it's so funny because like this one, I just love how it came together, because at the end, I ended up putting the old man was aging and then the young little girl. And it was just like all the pieces fell in, and I didn't have the coronavirus. And I was looking for a magazine, and all of a sudden I got it, and I thought, oh, that's going to fit perfectly there. So it was just amazing how it just. But yeah, it uses me as a vehicle. I'm going to say that, and I don't like saying that as like I'm special or anything, because that's no way what I'm trying to say. It's just. I can't do it. I mean, and I tried different things, and then it didn't work. And like 3 hours later, it's like, okay, well, let's try this. And but thank you, I appreciate it.
Talking about something that Ken talks about a lot, and it's been my experience that, and he says that, eventually we put the book aside, those words, and we get in touch with something within us. It's like it moves us to do something, and. I was talking to friends this morning, and I was saying that how, you move into a place of trust, which we don't have. We don't know that. We don't trust.
Yes.
we've moved away from something all powerful and dynamic to this very uncertain, unreliable, as Muji would say, what is perishable existence. And we don't trust. And when we move into that place, and Ken talks about, we can move into that same place as Helen did in the book, you know, we move into that place of trusting and listening and being still, then we get access to things. It's like, wow, you know,
Yes.
I say things,
Yes.
I do things, I hear things, I'm moving in a place
Yes.
where it's not me.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
that really comes from the stillness of the mind of choosing for this, because that comes from the blank screen. That can't come through here. And I know I was just reading something, I don't even know where it was from. I mean, it was the course where it was basically saying, you know, we keep asking to hear the voice. And the reason we can't hear the voice is because our rock is shrieking that we hold on to. And
all
yeah,
these concepts
right.
I'm holding on to. I'm this shouldn't be, I don't like it.
Absolutely.
And it's very descriptive, you holding up that black, you know, the chart with the
Oh yeah, right.
that.
This guy and
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah, that black represents all that stuff on that
Yep.
new chart. That it's beautiful. I agree.
Yeah.
That's all those concepts, and moving that out of the way, I have access to this.
Right. Which was always there. But as long as this is invested, and again, we don't even know how deeply invested in this we are. And as I think as it starts to thin out and fall away, you start to realize, oh man, was I ever congested or, you know, stuck on that. And then eventually you can see so much clearer, again, everything that was already there. Where I like to think of it as, you know, like walking into the course for a lot of people is walking into a room that's just filled with the thickest fog you could possibly ever see. And you're clunking around and knocking into people and chairs and whatever. And then as you keep asking for healing, the fog starts to slowly lift. And then you start to see slight images and you start to see a little clearer. And eventually it clears out and everything's clear as a bell. And it was always there, but we couldn't see it clearly because of our investment in the ego.
And like that, the story that you shared, it's a bouquet, a banquet.
Yes, yes.
What's available, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And again, then there's some delicious banquets, you know? I mean, yeah, we all love those. Yeah, by all means. But even that is not where our truth is. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy them. So I hear a voice. Was that Andrea?
Is it me?
I don't know.
It's me. Hooray.
Zeta.
Andrea.
Yes.
Andrea? Okay. Okay. So I just had an idea about this this Genesis story, and felt I could compare it some way, where other books and delineations of creation stories tell the linear story, and are open to things like to fake news, like who, what, where, why, when, and how. All those things are open to fake news. The Course rouses the one presence of love from within us and matches us to the truth.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that's what that's what I wanted to. Anyway, that was my contribution. Thank you.
Right. And Ben, Ken used to say, and I don't know if you like this or not, but he used to say that the ego wrote the Bible and it's on God's name, so that we would never question God because we respect God. And so the Course is introducing the same story from a very different perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, because it really did kind of help to think about it again.
Yes, right.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So the most important thing is we're having fun now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, there's a
Yeah, because
yeah, go ahead.
God is in here with us. We're not talking about him. We're all playing together. It's not just talking about it. We found like the source of it somehow for ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye then. Thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay,
And I know
bye-bye, Ben.
Bye. And Marianne, are you still there?
I'm here, yes.
I know you have to go. I don't mean to keep you.
No, that's okay.
But it's almost like Ken saying that the ego wrote the Bible. It's almost like the ego wants to talk about the Holy Spirit and bring the Holy Spirit into its own existence because it's throwing open all these metaphors and ideas that Jesus is then using to elaborate and almost to converse with that ego Bible.
Oh, I forgot my map.
It's just so beautiful that even the ego is yearning for the Holy Spirit in that way.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you.
Sure. And you know, again, if you study different world religions, there's always a special character. And that special character is somebody that, you know, is on the pedestal that the average person can't gain. And in the concept of the Bible, you know, God is loving and then he's not so loving and he can cause, you know, pestilence and floods and whatever. And so even though there are some beautiful, loving aspects presented in the Bible, there's also the downsides of the God that's not always loving. And it would talk about the idea that there's actually places in the Course that talks about the God of specialness. Okay, somebody's got their, somebody's making noise over here. What was I saying? Oh yes, that God is specialness and that he is, you know, we've made God the God of sickness as the Course describes it. And that's a God who has a personality that changes because he's really a projection of the ego. Somebody forgot to turn the phone off, obviously. Oh, well.
Rita's on her phone. I don't know if she can do it. Can she do it on the phone?
Rita? Yeah, I think she's playing and she's not done. Let's see if I can mute her. I think no, I guess I didn't. Oh well. Anyway, yeah, so again, there's a mixed bag in the Bible. And though the aspects in the Bible that are loving are still loving, the Course is trying to help us understand that there could not be an unloving if we're talking about the God of love.
Thank you. Thanks for taking all this time to talk with me about all this.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Thank you again, Marianne, for everything, for a beautiful class. Thank you.
You are so welcome and have a wonderful holiday weekend, whatever that happens to mean this time around, but whatever.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See all of you.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Marianne.
You're welcome. Bye.
Very good.
Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
Yes.
Marianne, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's regarding Toastmasters.
Yes,
I've been working on the first speech.
Excellent.
I'm kind of stuck on the ending of it.
Okay.
So do I work with Inez like on that? Can she help with that? Or
Sure.
does it have to be completed?
Does it have to be what?
Do I have to do it myself and get it
Oh, no, you
completed?
can call on her. If she's not available, I'll be more than happy to help you with it.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm proud of you. Good.
All right. Thank you.
All right, sounds great. All right, see you next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, I have a feeling that we'll never get rid of Zita because she's talking, or she's up. She didn't turn off her phone. So it's after 5:30, so I think I will say goodbye to everyone, and hopefully you'll have a nice weekend, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hmm. Yeah.